Hi, everyone. Get ready for the How I Raised It podcast, the show where you get an inside, unfiltered look at how real entrepreneurs raise capital for their businesses. We'll listen to their stories, their successes, and the challenges they had to overcome to get to where they are now. I'm your host, Nathan Beckert, and thank you for tuning in to today's episode with Joel Holland of Harvest Hosts. This is a really cool startup that lets RV owners camp at wineries, golf courses, museums all over the country. If you're tuning into this podcast to learn how to raise capital for your business, I've created a super valuable free welcome pack for you. It includes a list of 2,500 investors who don't require a warm intro, plus 200 of the most important questions that serious investors are going to ask you. So this pack will really help you get prepared so you can rock your fundraise. To get this instantly, click the link in the description. It's free and you will be truly ready to pitch with confidence. And then last but not least, if you enjoy this conversation and think someone else would too, please share it with them and hit that subscribe button to get the latest episodes. Thank you.
Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by foundersuite.com. Today I have Joel Holland of Harvest Hosts coming to us from beautiful Vail, Colorado. How's your day going?
It's going well, Nathan. How are you?
I'm pretty good, pretty good. Nice springtime in Marin. I'm sure the mountains are beautiful this time of year. What's keeping you active in Vail right now?
Well, it's funny. Before this, I was actually researching flights to San Francisco to try to get up to Napa. We're in this shoulder season now where it's the only time of year I don't want to be in Vail. Ski slopes closed, everything's muddy. It's snowing right now, but there's nothing to do with it. I just want some sunshine and wine. So I'm hoping we get out to Napa either next weekend or the weekend after.
Sunshine and wine. Yes. How did you end up at Vail? Just because of skiing or what?
Yeah, a little. Well, that was certainly a factor. So my wife and I were living in the Washington D.C. area. That's where I built my last company, Storyblocks, which is a stock video production, music, graphics company, and sold that company. And we basically were at this inflection point. We had no kids, we had no real responsibilities, and decided, hey, if we're going to be spontaneous and try something new, why not do it now? And so we kind of impulsively purchased an RV, started traveling, ended up traveling through all the lower 48 states, and found ourselves in Colorado. And we were looking for that motivation, kind of that inspiration to live somewhere new. We both love the mountains, and I definitely love skiing more than she does, but you learn that a place like Vail has more to offer than just skiing. In the summer, it's amazing, the hiking, the camping. We fell in love. And so it's been 5 years, and I think, we've put down roots and are probably not ever returning to the normal city life again.
And it's amazing time, right? We can kind of build startups anywhere, I think. And, the fact that you can have a well-funded, successful startup from Vail and live the lifestyle is pretty amazing. So good for you.
It's actually one of my biggest points of pride with Harvest Hosts was proving that you can do just what you said. Build a company from wherever you want to. And my argument to other friends was, I think you'll actually end up building a better company if you're in a mental place where you're happier. And it's true. I could not have built Harvest Host into what it is if I was still living in DC. I'm convinced of it. Just personally being out here with this clear head, you always feel good. When I say there's no stress, there's literally no stress. It just translates into good company building, I think.
That's great. Well, so you hinted at it, but we haven't really given the audience what you do. So what is Harvest Hosts?
Yep. So Harvest Host is a membership club for RVers. And we now have closing in on 180,000 members who pay an annual fee around $100 a year, and then get unlimited access to staying at really unique kind of upscale locations like wineries, breweries, distilleries, golf courses, museums, and other really great small business attractions all over North America. And you've seen, in the news, RVing, of course, has become a really popular topic these days. because it's a safe way to travel. It's a really cool way to travel. So we were, of course, doing this pre-COVID, but since COVID, the tailwinds have only gotten stronger. But what Harvest Host tries to do is connect this world of RVers. And by the way, there are 14 million RV owners here in
Wow.
North America. There's quite a lot. We can like to connect them with small businesses where they can, support the business, have a really wonderful time staying in a winery, sipping the goods and not having to drive anywhere. And it's a blast. So it's been a really fun company to build.
What a neat, yeah, it's really cool. So let's just take a real simple scenario. If it's a small winery and I'm in my RV, I book it in advance, I pull into a field, and I have to be self-contained, right? I'm not hooking up to their electrical or anything like that, correct? Or am I wrong?
You're spot on. Yep, spot on. It's boondocking is kind of what you call the term, with no hookups. But RVs are built for boondocking and being off the grid for multiple days. I mean, they're really most of them are built for being off the grid for like a week. With Harvest Host, you're only staying usually 24 hours. And so, yep, you pull into a winery or right now, lavender fields are very popular. So we have a couple lavender farms. So you like pull into the middle of a lavender field, surrounded by beauty, peaceful, birds chirping, no noise. And that's your night. I mean, that's where you're spending the night. You're in it.
Will there be other RVs there, or is it usually like, this is my spot for the night?
I've done it a lot. Most of the time I'm the only one. But we do have a cap, of not too many. So typically our hosts can hold 1 to 4 RVs. Okay. So even a place that has 4, you'd never be right beside each other. Typically it's like, 1,000-acre property, so they can spread around. So you've really got the peace and serenity. And a lot different than, of course, a campground where you have hundreds of rigs that are all 5 feet apart.
Got it. Totally random question, but it's stuck in my head. I'm just going to ask it. So if I'm, driving around the country, staying in all these awesome lavender fields, and I'm sure there's 1,000 other cool spots, every few days, I've got to check into a regular type of campground for refilling my water tanks, black water, gray water disposal, all that stuff, right? Is that kind of the pattern your users are doing, or what?
It is exactly right. Yep. You basically go find a Harvest Host, stay there, maybe 1 or 2 of them, and then go to a campground, hook up, get your power, your water, your sewer, maybe a little television, and then continue. So that is exactly the pattern. And yeah, we now have over 2,000 locations, and
Wow.
we're adding right now over 200 a month. So our goal is to have over 3,000, by the end of this year. I think we'll be far beyond that, but there are tens of thousands of really cool small businesses all over the country that can support an RVer and could really benefit from having another customer too.
Yeah, it's cool. What with 2,000, this is going to be a hard question, but like, what are some of your favorite examples, or even what is a good example of different types, right? The lavender fields is one, wineries another. What are some of the other cool types of places?
Yeah, so breweries and distilleries have become a much more, it's a growing segment. It's probably growing faster than the other segments. That just represents people's interests right now. Microbreweries are becoming very popular. And so we're onboarding those quickly. Golf courses, of course, are very scenic and they have space. And so we have over 400 golf courses we work with. And then we have this category we call kind of museums and attractions. Those are some of the ones that are very memorable because they're so unique. So we have like outdoor air museums with, old, airplanes. We have the Tallahassee Auto Museum where you can go see the coolest like cars from all the years. Some of my favorites that I've personally visited, Mount Washington Cog Railway in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually park right there at the base and watch this coal-powered train built in the 1800s climb Mount Washington. It's crazy. Things on a 45-degree angle at a certain point. A modern marvel back then, no doubt. And then we have things like Kansas, the Underground Salt Museum, where you actually take an elevator 600 feet into the ground
cool.
and see them actively creating salt, which I never knew where my table salt came from. So it's kind of cool to say, there it is.
Cool. Interesting stuff. Tell me the pricing again. It's a monthly subscription, and then it's an additional charge per stop, or no?
No. So that's what's kind of unique about it. It's an annual subscription.
Annual subscription.
$99 a year. gets you unlimited access to all of our locations except for golf. If you want to add golf courses, it's like another $20. There are no additional camping fees. And so when you go to visit these businesses, you pay nothing to stay there. You are encouraged, though not required, to support the businesses you visit. And so, if you go to a winery, buy a couple bottles, do the tasting. If you go to the Underground Salt Museum, you'll buy a ticket for like $12, take a tour. So you end up supporting the businesses, but coming away with products, goods, and experiences. We tell our members, take a percentage of what you would have spent at a campground, which is like probably about $50 a night, and spend it with the hosts you visit. And this year, our members are going to spend between $40 to $50 million directly with these hosts.
Wow.
And we don't take any of that. So we don't charge the hosts anything to be a part of the program. We don't take any commission. It's just great for these businesses that we work with.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I would have guessed that you're rev sharing, but that totally makes sense. And it's probably a lot more elegant, and you're more of a lead gen for these small businesses, right? Kind of.
Yeah. And it's just simpler. In business, I love simple, like line of least resistance. And so our pitch to the winery is, look, you're not going to charge our members anything to stay there, but we're not going to charge you anything to be in this program. And we're going to bring you an extra like $13,000 to $50,000 in business this year for free. So you scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. And it's been a good relationship.
Are there issues? I mean, I'm sure with that many members, are probably some issues sometimes, but members leaving trash, or I don't know, just generally like not being good guests.
Good citizens. So no, we've been very fortunate. We have a code of conduct, which we drive home very aggressively with our members. They have to agree to it before they sign up. We remind them every single month. And it's very simple. It's kind of the camper's code. Take only pictures, leave only footprints. You just be, I always say, pretend you're visiting your grandmother, right? Like, how would you treat her property? Right. Fortunately, our RVers en masse are just a really wonderful group of people, especially those who join a program like Harvest Hosts. These are adventurers, these are explorers, and they just tend to be kind of good corporate citizens, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. Did you watch Nomadland?
I did. I don't know if I'm embarrassed. I couldn't get through it. I watched half of it. It was both too slow and also just kind of tough.
Yeah.
I think I need to give it another shot. I know it was an amazing film. Maybe I wasn't in the right headspace for it, but it didn't do it for me.
It's a different side of the nomad culture than what you're, working on. It was interesting though, but
yeah. And maybe that's it. Maybe that was my problem or my issue with it, is that is not the world of RVing that I understand or build or support or anything, right? Like it was the sadder part, which is it's just true. Like there are some people who are living out of vans out of necessity.
Yeah.
And it's like it's tough. It's like the downtrodden, like this is a tough situation. Our average member has a $300,000 unit and makes six figures a year. So it's just a very different world. And it's funny how it's like the same, type of unit, but just very different. And I suppose the analogy would be tent camps in Los Angeles and Tent City for the homeless versus people out in the Rocky Mountain National Park in a tent.
Yeah, right.
Same vessel, very different life experience. And it's sad.
Yeah. It's this whole van life thing is kind of amazing to me. I'm gonna claim that I was way early on the wave. In high school, my girlfriend and I bought a Volkswagen camper bus, the old school camper bus, and drove it Colorado to California, up to Canada, all the way to Quebec and New York and back. Like did the full US loop in this 1969 camper bus. Broke down like every 50 miles, but
dude, that's a cool experience, right?
It's a cool experience. It was fun. It was amazing. And now this whole van life thing is like, kind of makes me want to do it again, because maybe get a Sprinter van. What's your RV of choice? Do you have a big
Yeah.
RV or Airstream or Sprinter?
So we have a fifth wheel, and so
Okay.
it's very large. I pull it behind my truck. It's large because we go to a lot of RV events and we post up and like throw the party. We have a young daughter now, and we wanted to get a Sprinter van as an easier way to travel around. They're impossible to find right now.
Are they?
Just yeah, given the interest, they're sold out at a manufacturer's level. Most of the vans are sold out for a year, and so tracking down is really tough. So we're sticking with the fifth wheel. We might get a truck camper, just as a way to get back into the woods and do some more traditional, I call it hard shell tent camping. Typically we go back with a tent, but with a daughter, I think she needs a little more controlled environment. So throw a little truck camper on the top of the truck and see how it goes.
Yeah, that sounds cool. Awesome. All right. I could keep asking a million questions about that, but let's talk about fundraising for this. So when you had this idea, how'd you get it going? Was this something you bootstrapped or what?
Yeah, it's interesting. So Storyblocks was a bootstrap business, ground up, kind of, literally from ideation to sale. The traditional story, bootstrapping and then fundraising. We ended up raising like 18 million and then selling it to a private equity firm. Harvest Host was different. I bought the company.
Oh.
And so I was actually in a place where I wanted to do something else. I wanted to run another business. I love running businesses. I tried for like a year to figure out what I wanted to build. And it was like trying to force love, right? Like trying to force the relationship. It didn't work. And I finally stepped back and said, take a breath. Maybe buying a business is not a bad idea, and like apply the skills that I'm good at. So I literally drew this like Venn diagram of interests and then skill sets. And in the middle, there had to be an overlap with my previous life in stock media. Didn't want to do that industry again. RVing, I was really interested in. So RVing was the interest. In the middle was online marketing, subscriptions, renewal, retention, multivariate testing, all these things. And so I said, it's interesting. I wonder if I can find a business that uses those skills that I could purchase and grow. And that's what Harvest Host was. I bought it 3 years ago from a husband-wife team. It was a very small concept at the time, but had really good bones. And the underlying concept was phenomenal. What was missing was the scale factor. And I thought, hey, I can bring that to the table.
How many locations did they have when you bought it, if you can say?
Yeah. They were at about 6,000 members and 600 locations. And so now we're at 180,000 members and 2,200 locations.
Mm-hmm. How many members now?
180,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's great. This is a slightly tangential topic, but I think it's interesting. How did you... you don't have to give exact numbers or anything like that, but how did you sort of acquire a business like this? How did you set a price? How did you reach out to them and negotiate it without getting them keeping the price reasonable and stuff like that? Any anecdotes on that? How to purchase a business? Yeah,
totally. I think the way that a lot of people go about purchasing a business is wrong, and that is to use traditional methods, to just go through business brokers, go on bizbuysell.com. Like, to me, that's too efficient. It's kind of like the same way I buy media or advertising. If you just go to Google AdWords, you're paying a perfectly efficient price and you're competing against everybody else buying that keyword. If you can find mispriced media, you can get a discount and a really good deal with higher upside. So to me, business marketplaces are the efficient media that it's too easy. Everyone can go in there and look at it, bid, buy. So you're paying a premium. My approach is get to know a vertical really well, and something that you personally enjoy would be my choice. So for me, it was RVing. I knew RVing really well. I knew all the businesses in the space really well. Harvest Host was a business that never would have shown up on a business brokerage. It wasn't for sale. You wouldn't have found it if you were just like, someone looking to buy a business, but I knew it because I was in this world. I reached out to the owners cold and I just said, hey, I love your business. I'm a member. Would you have any interest in selling for the right price? And that was the way to phrase it. And that's my advice for anyone listening. If you want to probe or buy a business, that's what you say. Would you sell this business for the right price? that little qualifier there always gets a response. Because even if the group had no interest in selling, which by the way, the owners of Harvest Host had no interest in selling, but they had to find out what the right price was, right? Because what if the right price was like $10 trillion? Like you never know. So it got the conversation started, and that's all we needed. It took a few months of getting to know each other and convincing them that I'd be a good buyer and that, we could find the right price, but we got there.
Okay. And again, you don't have to share numbers, but what did you coming up with the price? Because they want to know a price. Do you do a multiple of revenue or anything, or what?
This is how I did it. I did a multiple. I did an EBITDA multiple.
Okay.
And so that, when we started talking, I said, hey, I don't know anything about your business. I don't know your revenue or your profitability, but my goal is to try to buy a business like this for, X multiple of EBITDA. And I gave a range.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of got the conversation started, and we ended up closing for a multiple that was towards the higher end of that range.
Yeah.
So when you give a range, be careful because you're setting a, you're putting a stick in the ground, and they're always going to now trend. Their mind's going to trend towards the higher end of the range. So
sure.
Be careful when you set that expectation. But if it can work, then that's the way I like to do it. I think multiples are great.
Yeah. Okay. Then the last question, then we'll move to fundraising. Then do you also incentivize them like, hey, well, you can retain X% of ownership just so you have a stake in the eventual successful outcome? Do you like incentivize anything like that?
And I think this is kind of like, this is founder or buyer specific. I personally don't like that approach. I like things, like I mentioned earlier, very clean. So I wanted all the equity.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want any partner whatsoever, because I knew I was going to be making some decisions that might make them uncomfortable, but to me would not be uncomfortable because I was in a very financially sound situation. So I could take risk. And I didn't want to have to think about hurting them as an equity partner. Whereas if I own all of it, I can make whatever decision I wanted and sleep really well at night. So I didn't let them roll any equity, but I did keep them on as consultants as part of the purchase. It was, I kept them on for 6 months, just to ensure a good seamless transition. And it went really well. So when you buy a business, I would for sure say, find a way to have a little bit of earnout. And it wasn't contingent on anything. It was just simply a piece of this purchase price. I'm going to pay you in monthly installments for the next 6 months, just to keep your skin in the game until we're transitioned.
Yeah, that's cool. Great. Okay. So I guess let's segue into fundraising. So then did you have to go raise capital? We'll talk about your fundraising journey. Did you raise capital, buy them out, or did you just buy them and then go raise capital?
That second one. So I was fortunate because of the Storyblocks, sale. I had capital, and I decided why raise capital to purchase this business when I can self-fund it. And I had the confidence. I had the confidence to know that worst case, I didn't think I would screw it up. And so based on the multiple at which I purchased them, the return on capital was actually really good. It was better than any investment I was going to get in the stock market or anything else aside from crypto. But any normal sane investment, my ROI was actually going to be very, very good. And so I was like, okay, am I confident that I won't screw this business up? And the answer was yes. Do I think there's upside where I could actually grow it faster and turn this into something even bigger? Yes. And I was very confident of that. But at a baseline, I was like, I won't screw this up, and the return is good enough that why wouldn't I use my own money? Like, why would I take, friends, money from friends, family, or even debt when I can just be the debt provider and get the best return? So I bought it with my own money. A couple years in, almost 3 years, because it's only a couple months ago, we did do this $37 million fundraise. It was unintentional. I didn't set out to raise funding. I never thought that we would raise funding. It just turned out RVing became so popular, we started getting a lot of inbound interest from private equity firms, and just it was constant. And so my other advice to founders is like, always take the call. So even though I had zero interest in fundraising, I still took all the calls, and I spoke to all the firms, some of which I'd worked with in the past. And I told them all the same thing, like, not really looking to raise. We're cash flow positive. We don't need the money. I don't see the point in bringing in a partner at this point. But as I got to talking, the valuations were very positive. I mean, we're in a very interesting environment right now. So it's kind of that fact that like at the right price thing.
Yeah, at the right price.
Yeah. So they were talking really good prices. And then the value add of having a partner who could bring something else to the table was big. And that's ultimately why I did it. It wasn't the money. It was when I went with Stripes. Stripes has already in the first few months been really helpful in helping us scale the business through things like finding talent. And so we brought on an amazing world-class CFO who I probably could not have recruited if we weren't a venture-backed company. Brought on an amazing chief of staff who they actually helped me find. They have an internal recruiting team actually. And so when we have job descriptions, their team helps us look for people, they vet them and screen them and then send them our way. So these are things that actually add value to my life and our business beyond just the capital.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so let's go back to sort of how it all unfolded. You're getting this inbound interest from private equity firms. You're taking a few calls. When you finally, the switch happened in your brain, like, all right, maybe I'll raise some money for this. Did you then, go out and collect a bunch of firms and have a little process or a little bake off, or or did you just sort of have a nice fuzzy relationship with Stripes and went down that path?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we didn't run any sort of formal process in that we didn't reach out to parties we hadn't already spoken to. However, over the past few months, I had been speaking to a bunch of firms who would come to us.
Yeah.
And so once we had, a legitimate offer from one of these firms, I followed up with the others and just said, hey, I know I told you we weren't really thinking about funding. We got an unsolicited inbound offer that we're considering. If you'd like to, participate, let us know.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, a soft sell push. And we ended up getting about five bids. And again, it was just because I already knew these groups and we had warm relationships. So I didn't have to take them through the whole business. We didn't have to do the whole get to know you blind date thing. I knew them because we'd already taken the phone calls. So always take the phone calls.
Always take the phone calls. Good. Interesting. Yeah, that's great. Were these all private equity firms or some venture? I mean, 37 is a larger number for venture firms, but yeah, or what?
Yeah, they were all private equity, and a lot of the ones you'd think of, and a lot of them technology. So it was interesting. It was firms that a few years ago, if you had said this firm is going to be interested in the RV space, I would have said, get out of town. But times are changing, and so they were larger groups. Some of them with a more strategic. Like some of them had other portfolio companies that were strategic, so it was a no-brainer. Some were simply interested in building something great, in this space, which they see as a large addressable market.
Interesting. Talk about raising from PE firms. On this show, we've had mostly folks raising money from angels and VCs. Are there any, unique elements to that? Are they mostly digging into your numbers or what? What's it like? What can you share on that?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. In my experience, I've now raised twice. Well, I mean, maybe it's always been private equity. So the only thing I understand is private equity. And so from what I've seen, they're looking for an established business with a lot of runway. And, the way they end up getting valued is typically some combination of a revenue multiple and an EBITDA multiple. And they always, one or the other, they always go backwards, right? So maybe it's, 10 times EBITDA, 5 times revenue. A lot of times those things are very similar. So before I do a raise, I make sure the business is in a place where I'm okay with that outcome, right? So I've always built very profitable companies. And so I'm fine with them being valued based on cash flow, because they are usually cash flowing very well and growing very quickly. But there is a bit of a timing game with raising from private equity. You want to make sure you're raising while you're growing, because if you start to flatline, the interest in your business is gone, right? Like, because they're trying to a private equity firm wants to buy into your business and sell for at least a 5x multiple, right? Like that's how they return. Hopefully they get some even bigger wins, 10x, et cetera. But I think, most PE firms would tell you 5x is kind of what they're looking at. And the only way they're going to get that is if you have substantial growth over the next, 5 to 7 years.
Interesting. Yeah. Are they typically taking a board seat? Are they, you talk about the value add of Stripes with the recruiting.
Yep.
I tend to think, and I don't have as much experience with PE firms, I tend to think of them as sort of less hands-on than venture firms, but I could be totally wrong. I don't know.
No, I think as a general statement, that's right. The firms, and everyone's different, right? And this is some of the advice I was given when I raised in my 20s for Storyblocks was, a financial partner is like a spouse that you cannot divorce. And so the advice between the lines was pick very carefully, because you're with this person, this group for until death do us part.
Yeah.
Hopefully a transaction and not a liquidation. And so it's not just the firm you choose, the partner you choose, like the partner at the firm. That's really what matters, because that's who you're going to be spending a lot of time interfacing with. And every partner is different. Some really like to be in it, a lot of value add. Some are a little more like, laissez-faire. Typically, as you get to know each other, you develop an understanding. And so, with Stripes, our partner's Chris Carey, he's wonderful. He's pretty much as involved as we want him to be. And so here in the first 90 days, I've leaned on him a bunch for recruiting, for helping with employment contracts, figuring out, legal stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's been able to help with. Probably as we get into a steady state, there'll be less of that. But we've built a really great board. And to your point, yes, he's on the board. Typically they take a board seat or more, depends on what kind of transaction you did. And they'll usually let you kind of fly as long as everything's going well. Now, when there's a little turbulence, there might be a little more leaning in. But that's why it's very important to choose that firm and the partner really carefully.
Yeah, no, that's good. Was Stripes the sole party that came in on the 37 million, or was it a multiple parties?
Sole. We had a number of firms that wanted to kind of come in. Again, I like simple. And I wanted as few seats at the table as possible, unless there was really a good reason to have another group, that would add strategic value. Instead, we built a great board, and we brought on board members who add a ton of value, that they just much less expensively than having to give up a bunch of equity.
Maybe touch on that just for a second. So you've got, obviously you're on the board, I'm sure, the Stripes partners on the board. What other board members did you try and attract or recruit for your board?
Yeah, so far we brought on Dick Raines, who's the CEO of Carfax, and he's just wonderful guy, ton of experience. I mean, he's taken that company, to something quite large, of course, but also through thick and thin, like good times, bad times, economies up, economies down. He's seen a lot, and so. He was actually a board member that Stripes helped us find and recruit. And, the value he adds is tremendous. And he is compensated, board members are compensated, but again, the compensation compared to bringing in another firm that would take a big chunk of equity. If you think your equity is really quite valuable, then that's an expensive proposition.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. What else do I want to ask you? I'm sure pandemic was good for business. Right? It sounds like.
Yeah. We were very fortunate. I mean, pandemic was complete. I mean, we were blindsided in March of last year, just like everyone else. Everything dried up. Membership dropped 80%. The sky fell. But we were also pretty optimistic that RVing was going to rage back, because people have to travel. A lot of people need it to stay sane. Road travel is going to be the safe option, not air travel, not hotels. And that's exactly what happened, right? So we kind of leaned into it. We lit up some large advertising campaigns, really highlighting how, safe, scenic, and supportive of small business RVing is. And it worked out really well. it could have gone both ways. I mean, it was a black swan event. So clearly we were fortunate that we benefited from it. I'd say we certainly took the baton and ran with it, right? Like we staffed up quickly, we raised this funding, and we hit the ground running. So we took the winds and we put a parachute on, right? Like we tried to fly with that wind.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Well, you've got locations to scout. Where will you go this summer? Do you have any particular plans or routes?
Man, the big trip that keeps getting away from us is Alaska. I don't think we'll be able to do it this year, more because we now have an infant daughter, and that's just a lot of traveling. But we took her on her first RV trip to Moab
Cool.
last weekend. It's super cool. We'll do more of that. We typically drive across the country once a year. We have a lot of family still in Virginia, so we'll probably head across at some point, go to Virginia, visit. But that's what I like about RVing. It's a very spontaneous activity. So we have no plans at this moment, other than we're going to Wyoming in July for an event. But honestly, like this weekend might pop up and we go, you know what? Let's go to Arches National Park, right? Like that's the beauty of it. It's very spontaneous.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, Joel, thank you. This is great. If people want to learn more, it's simply harvesthosts.com, correct?
You got it.
Good. I want to check this out. I've been trying to talk my wife into letting me get a Sprinter. I guess I can't even get one if I wanted to, but like I've been sort of like, nudging that in her direction and planting the seed of an idea in her brain. I don't know. It may take a while, but yeah. Anyway.
You should do it. I mean, you can always start by renting, right? Like if you go to outdoorsy.com or rvshare.com, you can find exactly the type of unit you're interested in, try it out, and then maybe buy. The nice thing today with renting is it's kind of like Airbnb, where you can go stay in a nice house. You can stay in someone's really nice Sprinter van. It's not one of these like crappy rental cars anymore.
Yeah.
So you can get the full experience before you buy.
That's a great sales pitch to her. We have a great weekend at a winery.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and then make sure you take her to a winery, because the key is going to be showing her an amazing time.
Yes. Perfect. All right. On that note, I've got my work cut out for me. You've got your work cut out for you. Appreciate the time, and check out harvesthosts.com. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.